Good morning, everyone. Mike's MMA Picks here with your Fight Morning Quick Card Breakdown show for UFC London, where we have 15 fights on the docket, 10 of which are currently favored to end inside the distance. We are going to put the quickness into this quick card breakdown show this morning. Let's get things kicked off. Want to wish everybody a fantastic fight day. Make sure to get your plays in, pick your spots, and have a phenomenal event. Remember, the card begins this afternoon at noon on the East Coast, 12 o'clock p.m. And let's get things started inside of the O2 Arena, where the first fight of the night, we have a flyweight matchup here. Daniel Perez taking on Jafel Filio. Filio minus 110, Perez minus 110. What do we know about these fighters? Filio, Nova União fighter who is massive for the division. You watched the Makayev fight. You watched the weigh-ins yesterday. Filio coming in with a significant size advantage after rehydrating. And he's taking on Perez, who is a mixed bag of a fighter. He's going to be celebrating his 35th birthday in the near future. A fighter who has great balance, can string punches together, has solid cardio despite being an elder statesman of the division, has fought solid competition in previous bouts. And one thing I need to mention here, Filio may not be putting a lot of combinations together, and he may receive some hate for his strikes per minute being low. But what we need to consider also is if he is able to get back control here, is if he is able to establish top position. Sometimes you're riding out time in a dominant position and you aren't necessarily throwing a handful of strikes. Now, Perez can throw hammers out there. I'm going to be picking Filio here in this match. I know Perez is a competent, worthy flyweight, but what I see here is the control time of Filio being a difference maker. I think he's going to end up backpacking Perez. We saw Carlos Hernandez do that at one point in time. And I know that this should be a solid affair, closely aligned fight. I have no action on this bout, but I'm going to be picking Filio. Next up, where we have Shauna Bannon taking on Bruna Brazil. This line has widened recently. Bruna Brazil sitting at minus 140 now. And you have Shauna Bannon, who is an undefeated fighter out of Ireland, kickboxer, and she has a background in Taekwondo as well. But I'll be honest, I don't put a lot of stock into these undefeated regional fighters, especially when it comes to low-level women's mixed martial arts here. I'm going to be picking Bruna Brazil despite her issues being knocked out 3 separate times in her professional career. I believe she's 8-3-1, or let me just double check that. 8-3-1, correct. And Bruna Brazil, she may have the physicality here. She's the larger fighter. And you look at those crazy eyes that Shauna Bannon had at the weigh-ins. That's the look of an undefeated fighter who has yet to taste defeat. And in this spot, I think that may come back to haunt her here. The only issue I have is Bruna Brazil seems to be a bit fragile. And you watch the Denise Gomes fight, Bruna Brazil was a significant favorite in that matchup. And that goes to show you not only the odds makers and folks who invested the time researching, they saw the skill set of Bruna Brazil being superior to Denise Gomes at one point in time. Now, she could get put out, and we've seen Bruna Brazil get put out before. She has a tendency to fight with her hands low, which may come back to haunt her here. But I'll be picking Bruna Brazil to get the victory. Next up, we have Chris Duncan taking on Yanil Ashmuse. Ashmuse coming in at plus 130. Chris Duncan sitting at minus 150. Chris Duncan, the Scotsman who has a solid camp behind him, but he is one of the most hittable fighters on the roster. And you do not want to be playing around with Yanil Ashmuse, who can crack. We saw that in his last fight. Yanil Ashmuse, The challenge here is there isn't a tremendous amount of tape out there on Ashmuse, who's only 28 years of age. He reminds me of Guido Canetti in some regards. I suspect he's got a limited gas tank. He's going to have a low center of gravity, tough as nails, going to throw some overhand strikes and throw with mean intentions. And Chris Duncan is going to look to weather a storm, possibly use some of his grappling, but I think that he may be flustered by the bright lights here, Duncan, who is going to have a contingency of fans rooting for him inside of the O2 arena. So I see a firefight ensuing. I'm going to be picking Ashmuse here, but this is one of those fights where, and we spoke about last week that there was live betting opportunities galore. This is going to be one of them. I want to see that this first round, these first few minutes of Duncan versus Ashmuse. I want to see who's eating the strikes, who's taking the damage, who's looking to be the fresher fighter, who potentially is going to gas out here. So I'll be picking Ashmuse to catch Duncan here. And I think that his toughness is going to possibly get the best of him here. So give me Ashmuse for the victory. We've got a number of comments here inside of the comment section. Lou, good morning. Great to see you today. Thank you for tuning in. Michael, excellent. Thank you for joining. Stevie, great to see you. Joseph, top of the morning on this fight day. Let's continue the journey here where we have Caitlin Vieira taking on Pannie Kianzad. Pannie Kianzad is a fighter who's made us some bank throughout the years. She's a striker by trade. She's somebody who's very fluid on the feet, long, rangy fighter. And she's taking on Caitlin Vieira, who, man, you know, if she could only fight to her potential, she would be a real force in the division. Mean fighter. This is one of the fights that jumped off the page when you watch the stare downs. Both of these young ladies getting in each other's faces. Vieira does have a ground game. She does have powerful strikes, but it comes at a cost. Sometimes she will overcommit. She's been caught in previous fights, and she's one of these fighters where she's let me down a number of times, and I will be picking Vieira to win this bout. I think that her toughness and the Nova União corner behind her is going to be a difference maker. We talked about Filio earlier. This is another spot where I think that Vieira is going to cause Kianzad some trouble on the feet, landing the much heavier strikes. I know Kianzad may have the volume, but Vieira should be landing the more impactful punches. So I'm going to be picking Caitlin Vieira, and if this fight hits the mat, Vieira does have an advantage there as well. Next up, where we have Mahmoud Muradov taking on Bryan Barbarina. Barbarina moving up to 185 pounds. I was at Barbarina's fight against Sage Northcutt, where Northcutt was annihilating him on the feet, and then the tables turned. We saw Barbarina. He's a survivor, man. But how much did that Vicente Luque fight take out of Bryan Barbarina? We've seen it in a number of fights. He seemed to wilt late. But here's the situation. Gerald Meerschaert, I got to point this out. Gerald Meerschaert extended Muradov, and we saw that Muradov isn't necessarily who we thought he was. He's crumbled under pressure late in fights, and maybe this is a case where it's just too much for Barbarina. Come on, why are you jumping up to middleweight? I know he's fought at middleweight earlier in his career, but we're talking about a fighter who has relied on his grit, his toughness. Now he's giving away a lot of advantages here in regards to the height, the reach, the power. They're all on the side of Muradov here. The only issue I have for Muradov is he's had a tendency to fold late in fights. And Barbarina, he's tough as nails. If he can weather an early storm here, if he can make it out of this first round, make it out of the second round, if it goes that far, this is a live betting opportunity for Barbarina. I'll be picking Muradov here, but I do not trust Muradov the longer I watch him fight. Christopher, good morning. Great to have you here for the morning show. And I agree, Muradov, the finish potential is there for Mahmoud Muradov. There is no real legitimate reason. You saw Barbarina's lower half of his torso seems to be protruding, seems to have put on some additional weight. We'll talk about adipose tissue in a few minutes, but this is one of those fights where Muradov, this was a gift matchup for him, taking on Barbarina, who's been a bit of a punching bag many times. But if he cannot get Barbarina out of there, I know Barbarina was sitting around minus 250 at one point. I mean, Muradov was sitting around minus 250 for a short span of time, and now he's been bet up to minus 380. But man, if you're going to play Muradov, I'd rather take him inside the distance. If this ends up going to the third round, it wouldn't surprise me to see Muradov empty his clip and Barbarina be there still standing. So give me Muradov inside the distance, but be aware that there are no certainties in this game. And if Barbarina turns the tide, watch out. Now, we talk adipose tissue. We're talking Jamal Pogues taking on Michael Parkin. We have, or Mick Parkin, I apologize. Mick Parkin is a boxer by trade. He's only been inside of the octagon a few times, and not necessarily the UFC's octagon. He's fought in regional promotions. We've seen him. Not necessarily a fighter that I'm willing to go out and back with my money here. He's taking on a Jamal Pogues who looked horrific on the scales, and I mean horrific. Pogues is a fighter who, man, he's got, as Sean Orr mentioned, the quick twitch muscle fibers. And is he going to use those to push Parkin against the octagon fence? Is that his game plan here? Is this a situation where the octagon cage is going to have to be reinforced? Good luck, my brothers, if you're making a play on this Pogues Parkin matchup. I have no action on the bout. I will be picking Pogues, though. I think that not only does he have a semblance of a ground game, which is a potential difference maker here, but he's also the much faster fighter. If these two end up trading in the trenches, it's anybody's fight, though. We've got another comment here. Horrific is the word. Horrific is the word of the day when it comes to Parkin. Parkin versus Pogues. Next up, where we have a fantastic matchup here, we've got Mark Diakiese taking on Joel Alvarez. Joel Alvarez coming in at minus 195 at the betting window, and he's taking on a Diakiese who, you want to bank on Diakiese going back to the wrestling here? That may be a dangerous proposition when he puts his head into Joel Alvarez's hips and tries to get a body lock, tries to land a takedown. Joel Alvarez has the potential to lock up a submission. And I hear a lot of talk out there about Alvarez's takedown defense. Yes, it's horrible, but he gives up the takedowns. That's a voluntary action, and he's looking to land submissions on his opponents. Mark Diakiese, he fought Borshev, Hadjovic, and he's fought a number of other fighters. Wasn't successful against Michael Johnson, but we know Diakiese, the longer this fight goes, if he has his cardio in check, that's one significant advantage for Mark Diakiese. But other than that, he's giving up a significant reach advantage to Joel Alvarez. Joel Alvarez has the much longer reach. Joel Alvarez has a competent, dangerous submission game. And Mark Diakiese hasn't necessarily faced a submission expert in recent years. I banked on Nasrat Haqparast to beat Diakiese. We've seen Diakiese fold and wilt in previous matchups. And you watch back the Alvarez-Sarukian fight. I mean, he was split open. Alvarez was split open in that bout. We didn't get to see much play out. I was on Sarukian there, and This is a completely different matchup. I know the O2 Arena is going to be pulling for Mark Diakiese, but I'm going to be picking Joel Alvarez, and we got in on Joel Alvarez at minus 152. Next up, Danny Roberts versus Johnny Parsons. This is a man. You talk about the slugger knot against hot chocolate. I watched tape on Johnny Parsons, and he is going to sit in front of his opponent and sling punches, uppercuts, kicks, etc. The problem here is Roberts has great footwork, and if he's able to remain conscious, he has a number of significant advantages against Parsons. The challenge is, though, can Roberts stay conscious? Because Parsons, I know he doesn't have much octagon experience, but he does have a lot of kickboxing experience. And Parsons, he throws hammers out there. This is a very tough fight to pick because Roberts' better skill set just about all around, and Parsons, the knockout power. For staff picks at MMA Oddsbreaker, I picked Roberts, but I gotta say, I think that Parsons is going to end up knocking Roberts out. If you're going to make a play, I would play Parsons. Scorecards, no action. I'm going to be picking Parsons here. I'm going to go out on a limb and pick Parsons to surprise folks, and he may be losing the fight until he's winning it. So give me Johnny Parsons there. Interesting matchup. We've got here we go. Under 2.5 and no distance. Both are chinny. I see that. Yep. Roberts is the chinny one. Yep. Shout out to Lou Betcha. Yes, Moyes. Great to have you here. Excellent. Can't trust Parsons. Yeah, Parsons is he's gonna go for it. Fight doesn't go the distance is a look also. Let's see. Fight doesn't go the distance around minus 200. And then you're looking at but the challenge here is if this fight goes to a decision, then it's likely Roberts winning. But I don't trust either guy's chin here. I'll be picking Parsons to win, but scorecards no option is what I'm looking at. Next up, we've got Davy Grant against Daniel Marcos. Davy Grant is a tenacious fighter who will not give up on himself. We've seen he's been caught and locked up in submissions against Marlon Chito Vera and others. The blood streaming down his face. He's losing fights, and then he comes back and clocks folks. We've seen it so many times. Daniel Marcos, though, the fighter who is going to go for it, younger fighter who has a mixed bag as far as a skill set, poses multiple threats, very aggressive fighter. And this is another one of those cases where if you've got to be careful what you wish for. And if you want to get into a firefight with Davy Grant, be careful. I know that he is, man, he's a fighter who is going to take risks. Both of these fighters are going to take risks. And what amazes me is Grant, he's been successful through the years, even as an elder statesman, throwing these wide, loopy punches, leaving his chin out there. He fights with a broken jaw many times, and he will just go for it. Marcos, though, very aggressive fighter as well. I'm going to be picking Grant to get the upset here. The crowd, the submission threat of Grant we saw against the Sun Sao. I know that there was a foul that took place in the last Grant fight, and a Sun Sao got a raw deal there. But I'm gonna be picking Grant here. I think that one last ride for Grant here. I wouldn't be surprised if he hung up the gloves. Now, wow, what a fight. Lerone Murphy against Josh Kulibali. Josh Kulibali coming in as the plus 125 underdog. And Lerone Murphy looked great on the scales. It seems like he's taking this fight personally, especially losing that fight. The opportunity to fight Nathaniel Wood, that would have been a hell of a matchup. But Lerone Murphy, we know he's going to come at you. He's going to look to land on your grill. And Kulibali is a grinder. He's a Filipino fighter who is tough as nails, scrappy. Looks are deceiving. When he steps on the scales, he doesn't look like he's all bricked up. But when he gets in there, it takes a few minutes for him to get going, though. We've seen against Bagdasaryan, it takes him a few minutes to get going. So Lerone Murphy, if he can get off to a quick start here, he could pose Kulibali some real problems. If this fight hits the third round, this is a live betting opportunity for Josh Kulibali. I'd rather play Kulibali headed into the second or third round than touch this money line right now, because Murphy, I have a hunch, is going to come out guns blazing and he's going to be locked in. So I'm going to be picking Lerone Murphy, but it would not surprise me to see Josh Kulibali end up grinding this fight out the later it goes. So give me Lerone Murphy there. Next up, we've got Ziam taking on Jai Herbert. Ziam has blown out to a -175 betting favorite. Congrats to those who were able to lock in Ziam as a significant underdog here. This line has flipped to a point where, when is the value lost on a play? Do you want to, do you have enough in your ego to swallow your pride and recognize what is the right side here? And I believe Ziam is the right side. I know the odds have swayed dramatically, but Jai Herbert, watch back his fight footage. I know that he's another fighter like Danny Roberts. He is able to hold things together for a certain amount of time. Against Nelson, though, Nelson's a very limited fighter. He walked away with a victory there. I don't trust Herbert's chin. I don't trust Herbert the longer this fight goes. And Ziam out of Killcliff, he has turned a tide here as far as I'm concerned. Very impressive. Very impressive. I missed the boat as far as Ziam at underdog odds, and I got in at -162 on Ziam, but I like what I see in Ziam. I think that he has the skills on the feet to compete. And you watch the stare down. That's one of the reasons I held back on making a play here. Also, the length, everything is that they are very comparable fighters stylistically, except you have Ziam, the much younger fighter. Ziam, he also has a great, as far as accolades go from a striking standpoint, he has some flashy kicks. He's got punches. He's got grit. He now has a threat of a wrestling game. He's a fighter who's putting it all together, and at a young age too. And Jai Herbert is getting up there. I know Herbert's going to have the fans behind him here, but I'm going to be picking Ziam to get the victory. And it would not surprise me to see Ziam end up knocking out Herbert. That's one thing. If you want to play the decision line on Ziam, you can. I just don't. I'm not comfortable playing that. I'd rather just take his money line here. Yeah, let's see. So you have Ziam -115. Congrats for locking in that play. Moyes, more IQ on the ground. I agree as well. Herbert, solid gas tank. We saw against Tybura for moments. He was having moments there, right? The reach, the height, the length. This is a wash in this fight. But Ziam, the more dangerous striker, he also, I believe, has a better gas tank here. And he has shown us against Figlak and others that he's able to dig deep and go for it. And he's able to fight his way out of positions on the mat. He's able to reverse fighters. And this is a fighter who's developing right in front of our eyes. So that's one of the reasons, or many of the reasons, I ended up on the Ziam side here. But I understand why folks are backing Jai Herbert. Give me Ziam. Next up, Paul Craig against Andre Muniz. Paul Craig dropping down to 185 pounds, taking on Muniz, who, man, that Brendan Allen fight, that wasn't a good look for him. He ended up gassing out and getting submitted. And he's a dangerous fighter. And Paul Craig, very aggressive. And I suspect Paul Craig is going to, these two are going to meet in the center of the octagon and lock horns right away. I think that this fight is likely going to end early. Both of these fighters, competent ground fighters with a lot of pride in their abilities. So, do I see the potential for a knockout here? That would not shock me. Paul Craig, he's one of those fighters who, you get to the big dance because of your grappling, and then you train and try to address your deficiencies, and then somehow you end up overcompensating there. And both of these fighters should get right to it on the mat. I'm going to be picking Muniz to win. I think he is the more dangerous grappler on the mat. There's a position that he hasn't seen. There isn't a position that he hasn't seen in this matchup. And I think that Craig, the move down to 185 at this stage in his career, this is somebody who's hitting the latter part of his 30s. Not the best decision. I know Craig has some wins over some amazing competition against Jamal Hill and the greatest light heavyweight in the sport, Magomed Ankalaev. So give me Andre Muniz to win, and to win so inside the distance. We've got a number of comments here. Let's see. Sergio, thank you for popping in. I appreciate you. Excellent. Craig made middleweight and he looked pretty good. Yeah. Craig did look pretty good in that, in the weigh-ins. I was a little shocked there, but I still think the move to 185 is not the best. Next up, we have one of the best matchups on the card, Nathaniel Wood taking on Andre Fili. Now, this is a situation where before doing tape, I was on the Fili side here. I was watching Andre Fili's fight against Bill Algeo and many, many others. We know exactly who Andre Fili is. One of the toughest featherweights in the division. We were on Fili against Pineda until that, I believe there was an eye poke there. Fili, tough fighter, fights out of a great camp at Team Alpha Male, and he's going to go for it. And you have Nathaniel Wood, who was a small bantamweight, who now is coming up to 145 pounds and has had a couple of successful fights there. You watch his fight against Jourdain, and it seemed as if he's more comfortable when he's in the pocket, when he's landing those leg kicks, when he's dancing around the octagon using his footwork, and that should be the difference maker in this matchup. That's one of the reasons I ended up on the Nathaniel Wood side of things. I know I lost some money against on Nathaniel Wood against John Dodson, and you saw he has the potential to get his lights put out. But the longer this fight goes on the home turf, this should be the loudest pop, besides Aspinall, this should be the loudest pop for a fighter on the entire card, Nathaniel Wood. At minus 205, we got in on Nathaniel Wood at minus 190 here. And Andre Fili, his long, loopy punches, his front leg is accessible for the leg kicks. And we saw, I know Charles Rosa is not Andre Fili. They're not even in the same stratosphere. But the key here is the game planning for Nathaniel Wood. The Johnny Eduardo fight, the octagon debut for Nathaniel Wood, I highly recommend folks go back and watch that. It showed you what Wood is made of. Now, he could get cracked on the feet, and that it wouldn't even surprise me to see Wood get knocked down and fight back here. But the longer this fight goes, especially also considering the judging, this fight, if it does hit the scorecards, I suspect that the volume here for Nathaniel Wood is going to be a significant difference maker. And Fili, the thing that I'm concerned about is the back control. And we've seen in other matchups, Casey Kenny, etc., they were able to find Nathaniel Wood's back against the fence and hold him there. If Fili's able to do that and drain time from the clock, then that's a real problem here. And that's one of my causes for concern. This is a reason it's a 2-unit play for me on Nathaniel Wood at minus 190. But Andre Fili, live fighter, great respect for Andre Fili. He has evolved over time, which is great to see. I know against Michael Johnson and others, he's really come into his own. So proud of him. Let's see. Fili is too accepting of bottom position. Well, you you do have a point there. Nathaniel Wood, I wonder if this fight hits the mat, is he going to be content playing in Andre Fili's guard? So we'll see. We'll see. I am on Nathaniel Wood, and I'm picking him to win. Next up, Molly McCann against Julia Stoliarenko. You watched one of the iciest face-offs on the entire card. Molly McCann, who is coming off of the loss to Erin Blanchfield. McCann is a tough fighter who's on home turf here. She's going to come out like a meatball of energy, and she's going to bring the fight to Stoliarenko. Stoliarenko, very dangerous on the mat. She's a one-trick pony. She's going to go for the armbar, and she's going to spam it time and time again. We saw against Chelsea Chandler. She just was eating strikes, trying to lock up her patented move. And there's a real chance that she finishes McCann in this spot. I've been eyeing the fight doesn't go the distance here. I typically don't like laying significant juice on women's mixed martial arts ending inside the distance, but I think that may potentially hit here. And Stoliarenko made the weight here, so that's been put to rest. This is one of those fights where you wait until the weigh-ins. There are a number of matchups that I think it was worth waiting until you see fighters on the scale before pulling the trigger. It isn't necessarily always the best idea to get these bets in a week or two beforehand, especially when you look at the Farah Ziam Jai Herbert fight. That's another one where I waited there. So this is an interesting matchup. It would not shock me one bit to see Stoliarenko lock up a submission. I have no faith. We saw Robertson choke McCann unconscious. I believe that was on soil overseas. So, man, I'm going to be picking McCann here. I think that the crowd may help her end up getting a TKO finish late, but I have no faith in Molly McCann, and I think that this fight ends inside the distance. Now, main event of the evening. But before we get to that, let's see what we've got here. Moise is going to be playing McCann submission. Okay. Exhaustion does tap out black belts. We've seen that many, many, many times. Now, we've got main event of the evening, folks. Tom Aspinall taking on Marcin Tybura. Marcin Tybura coming in as the plus 380 underdog, and Tom Aspinall sitting at minus 475. This line hasn't really blown out, and that's partially due to Aspinall being the fighter returning from a horrific freak knee injury. And Aspinall has the ability to land strikes here. He has the ability to submit opponents, and he's taking on a Marcin Tybura who's lost the adipose tissue. He's shrunk down, and he looks to be in great shape, but he's also the elder statesman here, 37 years of age, I believe, a fighter who is a well-rounded fighter, Tybura, but we've seen him against opponents of lesser caliber get cracked and taken out of there, and I think that this is what's going to happen in this spot. I see a post here. JP Taylor says he had Tom inside the distance. He still remembers the loss. Tybura getting disrespected. He looked good at weigh-ins. He did look great at weigh-ins, but I'm still going to be picking Aspinall to win inside the distance. I think that his fluidity on the feet, he's a very explosive fighter, and if that knee holds up, then this is his fight to win. You look at the fight doesn't go the distance line. It's sitting at minus 1,500 or so. So if you are going to make a play here, I would take a look at Aspinall inside the distance. If you really want to get action on the fight, you can look at it under 2.5. I do see this fight ending early, and Tybura, how is he going to win this fight? It could be if Aspinall gasses out. That's one way that Tybura wins this fight, because Aspinall still this far into his career hasn't really been tested in deep waters, and that's due to his winning percentage. You know, he's just taking people out, and you're at the mercy of who they put in front of you. So give me Tom Aspinall, and for him to win inside the distance. It could be a submission, could be a knockout, and there you have it, folks. Thank you for tuning in. Want to wish you a fantastic fight day. Remember to go get what's yours. We have broken down all 15 fights in 35 minutes. So take care. Put in the quickness in the Fight Morning Quick Card Breakdown Show. Take care, my friends.